Welcome back to Orange Nation. Maybe this offseason, the coaching staff will hope a few people lose their number, if you know what I mean. I can tie every Phil Collins song into
Apparently you can.
Please lose my number. You know who's doing good? Do you know who's doing good?
SU women?
Correct, Steve. Correct.
Doing very well.
You are abreast of local sports. It's amazing to me. They won again. It's
a safe bet these days. They keep winning.
Got a road win, right?
They did.
Any
on the
road
at
win's
Virginia.
a good win.
Yep. 85-79 yesterday as we welcome in our good friend Tim Leonard back from the game, and plenty to talk about with Tim, both with men's lacrosse and with women's basketball. This women's basketball team now 22-4 on the season. They're on a roll, and I know, we kind of threw it out there after the Louisville win about, top 4 teams in each region earn a home game. I don't know how realistic we thought it was at the time. Like, well, there's still a lot of work to do, but as they keep, checking off these wins, Tim, I mean, they've got 3 games left in the regular season. It's a distinct possibility this team ends up with a couple of home games.
Yeah, they're up to 17 in the AP poll today. So top 16 are the top 4 seeds in the NCAA tournament, and the NCAA committee did come out with a list of 16 schools last week. I think it was on Thursday night. Syracuse was not on it, but I'd have to think they were in the others receiving votes type of category.
They had a graphic of 5 schools that they put up after that, like the 5 schools that just missed out, and they were on that graphic.
Okay, all right.
I like to say that's the in the hunt graphic, like with the NFL playoffs. They always have in the hunt. So Syracuse was in the hunt
First
graphic.
4 out.
Right. That's a good way of looking at it.
It was 5, though, but yes.
First 5 out. Thank you.
And even since then, Notre Dame has lost a game. They were inside the top 16. I know there's been some discussion around town about why is Notre Dame ranked ahead of Syracuse. Now, in this poll, Notre Dame has dropped back to 19. And Syracuse, first off, this is the highest they've been in the Coach Jack era. It's their highest ranking since 2020 in the AP poll. But also, when you look at how they compare to other ACC teams, they're now the 3rd highest ACC team in the AP top 25. You got NC State at 6, Virginia Tech is 8, and then Syracuse 17. Then Notre Dame's 19, and Louisville is 20, I believe, in this poll that just came out about an hour ago. So that's about as high as they have been on the AP poll in terms of how they stack up in the ACC. So, yes, I think they're very much in consideration right now for hosting in the NCAA tournament. Charlie Cream did come out with an updated bracketology this morning, and he kept them on the 5 line as a 5 seed. So you've got to probably exceed expectations a little bit over the course of your final 3 regular season games and then the ACC tournament, which, as it stands right now, I mean, 1 win based on how things are trending, they're probably going to be a double bye team. So 1 win on Friday, and boom, you're in the semifinal of the ACC tournament.
So they've got 3 games left in the regular season, as you pointed out. They're home against Duke and Pittsburgh. So senior day in the Dome will be Sunday. And then NC State to close out the year on the road in NC State. You're probably not going to beat NC State. So if they go, let's just, for the sake of argument, say they win the 2 home games, they lose the 1 on the road. How much will that loss, hurt their case for a top 4 seed? And does that change at all what they have to get accomplished in the ACC tournament in your mind?
So I think if you lose that NC State game, you probably have to make it to maybe the ACC championship game to be considered a top 16 team is kind of what I'm roughing out of my head right now. It's obviously depends on how other teams do, and it's hard to say exactly. But one thing that is kind of weird is Syracuse's net ranking is not that high. I think they were 38 going into the matchup yesterday, and obviously the net updates each day. But you look at like Duke, they're playing on Thursday. For some reason, Duke's net ranking has been above Syracuse all year. So the metrics don't love Syracuse. I think some of that is because they're winning in these thrilling ways and in come-from-behind ways that it's not like they are dominating the advanced analytics, points per possession type of numbers. But they are 22-4, and at a certain point, you have to give them credit for winning these close games because that is a trait that is obviously valuable for any good team and any team that wants to make a run in March. So I think that NC State game, it's going to be exciting because it's going to be probably hosting on the line for the NCAA tournament in a way, and also could be the ACC regular season title kind of on the line. And the way things are trending right now, if Syracuse goes 2-0 this week, they probably move up a little bit more in the polls, and you're talking about a top 15 battle to end the regular season for Syracuse. It's kind of interesting because then a lot of teams will be playing on that Sunday. That is the Orange's off day, is the final day of the ACC regular season. So they might, if you beat NC State, win your last 3 games, you might be sitting back just hoping for like a Virginia Tech to lose, and then you could be the regular season champion.
It's odd that the analytics don't like Syracuse because, again, and I know what you're saying about the close games, and I know that the net takes into account margin of victory, margin of defeat, but you look at the 4 teams they lost to. They've lost to Maryland.
Right.
They got crushed by North Carolina, but both of those teams were ranked at some point during the season, and then they lost to Virginia Tech, who's an elite team, and they lost to what's the other? Oh, Louisville, who's an elite team. So,
right.
I don't know. They have no bad losses. They've got several good wins, sweeping Notre Dame. Obviously, they beat Louisville at home. It's odd that their net is in the 30s. You're saying?
Yeah, I could look today at what it updated to, but they were 38 going into this past week, and they beat Miami, who was ahead of them in the net ranking. The other interesting thing, and we've talked about it a little bit, but Brian actually was the one who kind of discovered this when he chatted with Charlie Cream. They do not do the quadrant system on the women's side for the net ranking. So, Miami, a road win back on Thursday for Syracuse. That's a quad 1 win in the men's game. And, right now, 39th in the net. So they even dropped 1 spot. I guess, you go on the road and beat Virginia, you're not going to get any sort of boost for that. But to me, like you said, the quality of losses they have and combined with the quality of wins, it's sort of head-scratching. So I don't really know why the net isn't favorable for Syracuse and why Duke is getting bolstered by the net ranking or some of these other ACC schools are ahead of them. I think we're in, year 4 or 5 of the net, and we're all still trying to figure out, like how we talk about it on the men's side, what is being valued in these rankings.
Yeah. Virginia Tech, 15 in the net. Louisville is 23. Maryland is 31. North Carolina, 33. So all of their losses are to teams in the top 35 in the country.
And Maryland is viewed as a bubble team right now, but they're 31 in the net. And Syracuse, we're talking about, can they host?
Sure.
And 39. So I don't know how much they'll factor in the net ranking. I would have to think that they take into account more than just the net, of course. But it is called the NCAA Tournament Evaluation Ranking, or Evaluation Tool is what the abbreviation stands for. So I do think it's being, if anything, under-discussed just how in the thick of the ACC regular season race this team is. And there's been some buzz. Kelly Gramlich tweeted this morning about Coach Jack should be ACC Coach of the Year, or she would be my vote if the season ended.
How does she not get it?
Right. I mean, it's what more do you have to do from preseason number 9 to in second place? And I know there's a lot of great teams. I think you could point to what Wes Moore is doing at NC State. They were picked to finish 8th in the preseason. They're a little bit behind Syracuse right now, and obviously ahead of them in the AP poll. Yeah, I mean, you could still point to Kenny Brooks at Virginia Tech because even though they were picked to win the league, they're right there again. But to me, if you're going off of who exceeded expectations the most, it has to be Coach Jack in Syracuse right now.
I don't think there's any question about that. In terms of expectations, we knew Deasia Fair was a great player. I think, we're seeing her, just kind of one-up herself, it seems like, every game. She struggled 2 games ago, right, against Miami. Didn't play great, but they still found a way to win that one, and then she came back and delivered another Deasia Fair-type performance yesterday.
Yeah, and Coach Jack told me after the Miami game she was dealing with, some back tightness, basically. So, I mean, when she scores 11 points, it's kind of like, oh, there's got to be something wrong with her because of how she's been scoring this year. She had 33 yesterday, so she's now had back-to-back 30-point games against Virginia. She had 36 inside the Dome against them last year. And I think the other point you brought up there, Georgia Woolley, her going back-to-back 20-point games. She set a new season high in points in back-to-back games, 24 and then 26 for Woolley in the last 2 games. And she's someone that has been dealing with some lingering injuries throughout the year, and now it feels like she's healthy. She was shooting great from three-point range at the end of last season, got off to a slow start this year, I think partially because of the injuries and kind of working her way back, and then boom, she goes 4 for 5 from 3 in the game yesterday. And if she's going to be shooting from three-point range at a clip like that, then that just makes them a more well-rounded team, which is exciting.
What can you tell us about this Duke team that they're going to see next on Thursday?
Duke's a solid team. I think definitely when you look at the 2 home games left here, Pittsburgh is a game that I think we can confidently say Syracuse is going to win. Pittsburgh has struggled all throughout the year. That's the Sunday meeting on Senior Day. That's set up to be what you would hope would be a convincing win. They won by double figures at Pittsburgh early on in the year. But Duke is a team that is trending up. They just beat UNC. They've actually got a big game tonight on Monday night on ESPN2 against Louisville, so that'll be interesting to watch. They'll have one last day of rest, you could say, going against Syracuse. But they've kind of been loved by the metrics all year. They just they've lost some close games. So their record isn't maybe quite as good as you would have expected from Duke, but I do think that game's more in the range of like a toss-up game than people are considering.
All right, so 2 chances left that we know of to see De'Asia Fair in action inside the Dome. The Senior Day set for Sunday, but we may see her come the postseason inside the Dome should things work out. All right, let's change our attention to the men's lacrosse squad. What did you learn about the Orange in this game? Because, the first few games were great. They're lopsided wins, but it wasn't top-notch competition. Maryland is obviously very good. What did you learn about the Orange from this game on Saturday?
They're a much better team than they were last year. I think we can take that away from it, and we sort of were thinking that going in. But the other thing that I was really focused on was how was Mason Cone going to fare at the Face-Off X? And this was a true big step up in competition for him. He ended up about 44% from the Face-Off X, which I think when you consider that Luke Weirman was 24 for 31 last year against Syracuse, the Maryland Face-Off guy, that is a big step up in that direction. So that proves that, all right, maybe Mason Cone isn't an All-American, but he's at least on the fringes of it the way that he has been going to start this season. And even when they went up in competition, he was willing to hold his own or able to hold his own against Luke Weirman. I liked that the first quarter, I think, is where Syracuse lost the game. They were down 5-2 at the end of the first quarter. And I think at that point, panic could have set in. And let's not mistake this. They have a lot of pressure on their shoulders in these type of games because there is a lot of that feeling or that pressure that, all right, is Syracuse lacrosse actually back? And they're playing in front of a big crowd. And I think they just came out a little bit tight in the first quarter. But I liked that from the first quarter on, they looked like they were the better team than Maryland, which they really haven't been able to do that against a top 5 team under Gary Gait yet.
All right, let's go to the very end of this game. It goes into overtime. Nice stop by the Orange to force overtime, and then they get the ball back after another nice stop in the OT. Michael Leo scores what appears to be the game winner. The refs immediately wave it off. Then they look at it, and they uphold the call. He landed in the crease, which you obviously saw. There was question whether or not he was pushed from behind. What do you think about the rule? What do you think about that particular call?
So I think the rule needs to be changed, specifically the replay rule. I do think they called it right based on how the rule is right now. It's kind of unfortunate because he let go of the shot well before. He kind of just like slid in, like his momentum took him into the crease. And Gary talked about post-game how when he went and placed his right hand to kind of get up after he had shot it, that's when his right hand was in the goal mouth. And that's deemed, even though it's a momentum, according to the rule right now, if you're in the goal mouth after you shoot, it still is considered no goal or you wave off the goal. The thing that I think really needs to be changed with the replay rule, and Gary has talked about this, there's been a couple times already this season, separate from that Michael Leo goal, where they converge with the referees, they're reviewing it, and they say, yeah, he was pushed from behind, coach, but we can't go back and say that now because there was no foul or we didn't throw the flag initially. They're not able to review whether there was contact or an illegal contact on a push from behind. The only thing they can review is, did he end up in the goal mouth or not? So they certainly need to change that.
And, Paulie, that's what drives me nuts about sports just in general when it comes to replay, whether it's baseball or football or basketball or, in this case, lacrosse. I hate when things are clearly wrong. And you're right. In this case, it probably wasn't the issue, right?
Yeah.
But there have been instances, as you're saying, that they can't fix it. They're like, well, we can see it on replay that it's wrong, but we can't adjust that particular call. We can only look at this. And that drives me crazy when, it's, well, that part of it's not reviewable. This part of it is. I hate that.
Yeah, it's silly. If you have the capability to review it, then you might as well do it. So I think that will be addressed. It feels like we change lacrosse rules and then we have to make tweaks to those changes. And it's like a never-ending thing here. Like when they introduced the goal mouth rule, at first they said, all right, it's just, will you land in the goal mouth? Then that year they realized, well, players are getting pushed into it, so they had to add that, and now we're basically doing it again with the replay of it.
Right. All right, so where do they go from here? It's a loss, I guess, but it felt like I know there's no moral victories for Syracuse lacrosse, but that was a great showing against a really good opponent, and I would imagine that gives them a little bit of momentum now here moving forward. Even though they're coming off a loss, they've got Utah coming up next, followed by Army, High Point, before they get into that Hopkins game. So they've got a stretch here of 3 more home games that seem very, very winnable. I would assume 6-1 going into that Hopkins game. Is that what we were expecting?
I think Utah should be a win. They're a team that was receiving votes in the preseason. They're 0-2 so far. They've lost to Denver and Ohio State, 2 ranked teams. So we'll see how that goes. That's a quick turnaround. It's a rare noon start on Wednesday. The Army game is a top 10 game,
Sure.
and Army looked very good over the weekend. They had a convincing win. So I think that's the type of game that now you're circling as, all right, you could bank a top 10 win here. And they really haven't had very many of those in the first couple years of the Gary Gate era, and that's what has left them out of the tournament picture, or left them out of the tournament last year. So you'd like to see them start converting some of these top 5, top 10 games to wins, and I think that Army game is certainly a big one. That's not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. And yeah, I think High Point is more in the vein of like Utah. That one should be a win. So you're looking at hopefully going 3-0, but Army is the toughest game.
All right, Tim. As always, great stuff. Appreciate you coming in. We'll take a time out here. Phone lines open the rest of the way. 315-437-7644. Back after this on ESPN Radio.